Hey everybody, it's Ziz here, and today we got to talk about the action combat in Ashes of Creation. And I know it's caused a whole bunch of conversation, and there are a lot of really awesome, great things I'm excited for, but there's also some things I saw that I didn't like very much. So let's take a look, let's talk about some of the stuff, but remember, this is all still very much a work in progress, right? We're still a long ways from launch. A lot of stuff's going to change, and this is just the action combat portion. There's still the tab target version as well. Remember, Ashes of Creation is doing their own sort of system where you can mix and match and mesh it together with action and tab, and so the tab target version of combat is going to be coming later on in testing, and this is just the very first iteration of the action combat. So obviously a lot of stuff is going to change, but there was still a lot of really awesome stuff I want to talk about. So first of all, I love the pace of combat. It looked fast paced. It was very quick. It was in your face. It was, aggressive and fast paced, but it wasn't like crazy fast paced, right? It wasn't ludicrous speeds. Some people who play, Black Desert Online, they're used to this really crazy sort of pace where it's just ridiculous, where you're moving around so fast. And this, it looks like it was a really good spot, right? There's some games out there like Elder Scrolls Online that kind of have an action combat system, but they're a little bit slower and they always felt a little bit clunky to me. And this definitely looks and feels a little bit more up to date, a little more fast paced. So I really love the look of that. Also, there's no locks, right? There's no animation locks. It doesn't root you in place. That was one thing I hated about Black Desert Online, was that when you would use an ability, it would automatically take control of your character and move you forward or left or right or wherever. So during your animation, you don't have any control over your character. And I hate that. I want to be able to move the way I want to move, right? I want to move left or right or up or down or wherever while I'm attacking. I want complete control of my character at all times. And so this does have that as well. It looks like you can move however you want. There were a couple abilities, where you could teleport or like a leaping ability, but overall it was fast paced and you got to control your character at the same time, which for me is like the perfect version of combat. And we also got to look, talking about that teleport, the Mage Teleport ability with a melee staff, and this is part of that whole system where you can mix and match your class and any sort of a weapon that you want, and I love that. I love how even where early development we get a look into how that system is going to play out, because you're going to get to pick. I love using a sword and a shield for whatever reason. You want to be tanky, or you love the way a shield looks on your character, or the role play aspect, whatever it is, you can pick the weapon you want, but still pair it with whatever class. I want to be a cleric and use a sword and shield. I want to be a mage with a teleport. I love that system, and this is very early and we got to look at it already. A mage with a teleport using a staff, I love it. It's absolutely awesome. And even though it's still early, the performance in this looked pretty good. The first part of the video, there's not very many people. It's kind of a smaller skirmish, a battleground, but the second half of the video where they're kind of showing what a siege looks like, that performance was really pretty good. I mean, there was a lot of people on screen. There's a ton of spell effects going on, a big, huge castle, big monsters, and the performance was really impressive. That was a big concern a lot of people had using the Unreal Engine, and even this early in development, it's showing that they can pull it off. They can handle it. And that is one thing that I love about this, is that they're testing the combat first, right? I think that's the most important part of an MMO, of a game, is how it feels, right? And a big part of that is combat. And they're not pushing that off to the end. Sometimes in other games, PvP feels like it's an afterthought. They make the game and then it's like, oh, let's throw some PvP on there, and it just doesn't feel right. This is the first thing they're testing: battlegrounds, PvP, the action combat, big castle sieges, performance, all, I think, the most important parts of the game. They're doing it first, and even this very quick early look at it, it's looking pretty impressive. And I'm really impressed with how fast their pace is so far, right? A lot of MMOs take 5, 6, 7, 8 years to develop, and here we are in such a short amount of time, and they are already doing a lot of stuff. And I know some people are like, oh, well, they bought the Unreal Engine, and yes, if they made their own engine, it takes longer, but they didn't have to do that. They took an engine that's out there and well developed and polished, and they're making it even better, and they have the developers to be able to do that. That really speaks a lot to hiring the very best developers and using a great engine. And one thing I loved was last year in PAX, one of the developers talked about how Stephen Sharif, every time they ask him a question, he has the same answer, which doesn't sound that exciting, but it really is, because I have seen a lot of games, alphas and betas, and they keep redoing stuff. We're gonna try combat, and we didn't like it. Let's scrap it and do a whole new system and scrap it. And I know sometimes you got to test stuff and iterate on it and make it better, but they waste so much time redoing stuff because it seems like they didn't think about it to begin with, and they tried one thing and then they try something, right? That wastes so much time. Now we have great developers, and Steven is giving them a clear-cut direction, and so they are moving very, very quickly, which is going to help the future of the game, not just the rest of the development, but once it's released too, you know, expansions and new classes and new zones. And they are moving at, I feel like it's a new standard for game development, especially in the MMO field, right? We haven't seen that from a lot of games, especially Kickstarter games that seem like they're taking forever. So a lot of really awesome, great looking stuff. I love the direction it's going, but there were a few things that I looked at and I was like, I don't like that at all. So first, there's only a few buttons, right? Only a couple abilities that they could use. Now, I do think that's going to change. I don't think that's ever the plan to only have 3 abilities you can use. I think this is a byproduct of them wanting to get all the classes in as soon as possible. And so instead of having only 2 classes with 20 abilities, they get all the classes with just a couple, right? So when you first look at that though, you're like, what's going on there? And I definitely hope they have more than, like, Elder Scrolls Online did not have enough ability. Kind of felt lacking. Guild Wars 2 is pretty good. They could use a few more. So hopefully that gets fleshed out. Obviously, once they add the tab targeting, we're going to have a lot more abilities. There's no way you could have tab targeting with just like 2 abilities, right? That wouldn't work. So that, plus another thing that really stood out to me was the camera. Oh my gosh. The camera was so close. I didn't like that. And worse for me personally is how it was over the shoulder, like 3rd-person view. I absolutely hate that. It looks so terrible in my opinion. For other games, maybe shooter games, it works, and I understand people will say, oh, when you're using a bow and a wand, you have to look down the side. And no, I hate it. I hate all of that. It drives me nuts. It's totally removed. Instead of looking like I'm controlling my character and like I am a representation in game of my character directly behind him, it's like you're watching someone else play the game. It's like, oh, here's this guy and I'm watching him from the side, and like you never look like you're running straight. It's always like from an angle. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Now, yes, this would be very easy to fix. A lot of games let you have options in game to change the camera, the angle and all this stuff. And so that's something they can very easily fix, but I definitely want to bring it up because there have been some games that didn't let you change it, and that would drive me nuts. Like literally, that's something to me. If we only had this over the shoulder camera, I don't know if I could play this game. Like seriously, like I hate it that much. But I do think that's something that they're going to change. Something I don't think they're going to change that bugs me is the look of the armor. It's so ridiculously over the top and overly detailed. And like, yes, it looks cool, but in practice, it drives me nuts. I don't like it. Now, this is just one style and one outfit kind of that we've seen. There's different races, there's different versions, but what concerns me is that Steven has said that he wants it all to be great, right? It's just like, make the coolest looking thing you can. Progression and visual progression is really important, especially in MMO. An MMO where they're trying to make everything meaningful, right? Where you have your home is meaningful, killing people and getting resources is meaningful. Like, having a flying mount because you are the king of a castle. Like, the whole game is predicated on having meaningful content, right? But when you are a level 1 character and you look just as cool as a level 90 character, it's like, where's the difference there? I don't feel any cooler. I don't look any cooler. I can't look at people and be like, oh, that guy's done a really good raid and he's a top tier player. Like, and I know there's going to be different tiers and like it'll look a little bit better, but it's so ridiculously overblown, it drives me nuts. And it's the same thing, same problem we're having with the spell animations. So over the top, it's ridiculous. Like even just with a few people on screen and your whole screen is covered with stuff. Once we start having sieges where there's 100 people, that's going to affect performance. It's going to be hard to see who am I attacking, where am I going, because there's 50,000 giant meteors. Now, don't get me wrong. Those meteors looked really cool. When they showed the siege and like the portals are opening and the meteors are falling through, that looks really awesome. But I feel like there's nobody in charge. I don't know if they have an art director who can stand back and say, hey, you guys, let's have a little bit of progression. A level 1 fireball shouldn't look like the end of the world Armageddon, right? Let's save that for the max level, you know, ultimate ability, right? Let's have a little bit of a curve here, right? Same thing with the armor. Same thing with the, you know, the spell effects. I want to see a little bit more of a difference there. So I don't know how much that stuff's going to change. I kind of get the feeling they really just say, make the coolest looking thing you can and throw it in there. And that's something that has always bugged me a little bit. I feel like the graphics, there's something off a little bit. I don't know if it's the lighting or the shadows or what. I feel like they're just, and they have some really talented artists. I'm not saying it doesn't look good, but I feel like they just make the coolest looking thing they can. They throw it in game and they're hoping that a lot of cool things mesh. And I feel like it's not meshing very well. So hopefully that changes. Also the animations, some of those looked really bad. And I think it's totally okay because it's really early, right? I don't think those are finished at all. A lot of them are going to change. And some of them look good, right? Like the two-handed sword animation looked pretty fluid. It looked pretty good. But like the wand, when they had the close-up version, he's like, pew, pew, pew. It looks so bad. I think that's going to change, but that looked really bad. And that kind of ties into one of the biggest concerns I saw was how floaty people said the combat looked. And I think a lot of that can change still. Now, it's never going to be as rooted and, you know, grounded feeling as something that has animation locks, right? As like BDO. But the problem is that BDO has those animation locks, which we talked about, and I hate, and people don't like the way that feels, so they speed up the combat crazy fast to give the impression of fast combat while being rooted, right? So you can't have it both ways. You can't be rooted but not be rooted, you know what I mean? So I would rather take floaty combat but have the freedom to move around. But there are some things they can still do. They can add some better sound effects. There were some, but they can have some better sound effects when you're, you know, when you hit, when someone hits you, the sound difference between leather and plate and all that stuff. Also flinching, when you get hit, your character flinches, and same with the person you're attacking. Also some better, when they're running, you know, some better like weightiness. So that animation stuff is going to improve. Absolutely. This is a very first early iteration of what they're working on. And so it's going to improve. It's going to change a lot. That's why we're testing. That's why we're going to give feedback. And that's why I'm going to hopefully bring you guys a ton of videos showing the progress, showing the changes, showing the updates. We are going to get in very, very soon. We're going to be able to do tons of videos, putting out content for you guys. Also live streaming. They're going to lift the NDA. So check me out at twitch.tv/itziz. I'm going to be streaming as much as possible. But overall, I'm very hopeful. I'm very excited. It looks really good, especially considering how early it is. I mean, this looks as good as some games that are like almost ready to launch, right? And this is still super early in the process while they're testing, getting ready to do, you know, PvP, castles, all that stuff. It's only going to get better and better and better. Then they'll add the tab targeting in. I am really excited, and I hope they clean up some of that stuff and make it better. But I'm super excited. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below about the combat footage. I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. Also, don't forget, you can check out my most recent video and another one you might like. And if you haven't subscribed, click that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.